This is the award-winning Lee Pitts Live.
Brought to you by Lee Health.
Southwest Florida, welcome back to another edition of Lee Pitts Live, and we're so thrilled to continue to bring you what we consider quality and informative programming here. We're here in the American Legion, Post 38, downtown Fort Myers. They've been hosting us for the past 4 weeks, and it's just been a thrill. Big shout out to the commander here, Kevin Boyd. We're in the gallery here, the art gallery, and some of the arts that you see around us have been done by veterans of the United States military, and we were so proud to show some of that as well. We have an outstanding show that's coming up for you. I'm so happy to do this show. We have one guest this time. We rarely ever have one guest on the show, so that's because it deserves the full show. Get a chance to talk to my good friend Abdul Muhammed, a resident Imam for the Center for Islam and Cultural Awareness. He's also the executive director of the famous Quality Life Center here in Southwest Florida that does yeoman's job with our youth. All that's happening on Lee Pitts Live. We go to a break, we come back. It'll be Abdul Muhammed, one-on-one on Lee Pitts Live. Southwest Florida, welcome back to Lee Pitts Live, and we're going the entire show with Abdul Muhammed. I've known him for at least 27 years. He's the executive director of the Quality Life Center, and what many of you may not know is that he's an imam as well for the Center for Islam and Cultural Awareness. Muhammad, let's bump you in.
Sure.
I will say at the outset, Muhammad, that I should have done this type of interview with you a long time ago, and I just, finally I'm getting a chance to do it. But the Center for Islam and Cultural Awareness seemed like when that title was created, yes, you were trying to say something. What were you trying to say with that title?
Yes, thank you, Lee. The Center for Islam and Cultural Awareness is to educate the public to not only look at faith, but to appreciate our cultural diversity that exists in Southwest Florida and around the world. So as we examine Islam, it's important that we appreciate the diversity of cultures as well.
Okay. Now, the appreciation of cultures as we examine Islam, would that also say that within the faith of Islam, that sensitivity around culture has always been a cornerstone, respect for various cultures and peace?
Yes, I think so. It's important to understand throughout the world, we have obviously different cultures of people. Well, Islam, just like Christianity, may be practiced in very similar ways, but from country to country, culture to culture, you will see its uniqueness, where the faith integrates with the culture.
When something in America, say negatively, happens as it relates to somebody from the Islamic faith, there's a general lumping of all Muslims are the same, all Muslims are like that. Am I misinterpreting that, or is that pretty much a fact?
No, I think you're right. I think public perception of Muslims, whether it's in this country or other countries, are often misrepresented and stroked with one brush. You know, growing up in the United States, serving in the military, serving overseas, seeing various cultures, one can conclude that when it comes to faith, people may have an identity of faith, but it's what the human being is all about within their psyche. No one said that Timothy McVeigh was a Christian or a military person who bombed in Oklahoma. The assumption at that time was that it was a Muslim. It turned out to be a Christian and an ex-military person. I know because I was interviewed during that period of time.
Back to Timothy McVeigh, would you say that that is because we live in a predominantly Judeo-Christian society, or would you just say that is the general stereotype of the way that the vast majority of Americans have been indoctrinated to think that Muslims do these types of things?
I think primarily the latter, Lee. I think we have in our society global policies, worldviews, motivations to do things around the globe. And often our country's motivation has not always been honorable. It centers largely around money, oil, and ownership and greed. This is what happens with human beings. So when it comes to warfare, often countries frame their politics, their message around their religion. And as a result of that, we are seeing what we're seeing today as it reaches the media in that way.
Now, you weren't born a Muslim. If you are a Muslim, that means you practice Islam. So Islam is the religion, Muslim is the what?
Okay, a Muslim is one who practices the faith of Islam. And I grew up with a Christian background. I lived the life of a Buddhist. And as a result of my seeking and searching, I came to the conclusion that Islam, the practice of Islam, complemented my thinking. The more I study, and I'm a student of Islam as well as teaching, I see the commonality of all of the faith traditions. So when I look at what we're talking about in terms of faith, for example, the Holy Quran is the Muslim Bible, so to speak. And so Jesus is mentioned 25 times in the Holy Quran. Muhammad's name is mentioned 4. Moses' name is mentioned numerous times, about 135 times. Abraham's name is mentioned 67 times. So when you read the Quran, you see a text that is seeking to unite the monotheistic faiths. And by that uniting of the monotheistic faiths is where we can expect ultimately to have peace, world peace, global peace.
The Quran, mentioning Jesus numerous times as you just enunciated, does that say that Muslims have a strong respect for Christianity and Jesus? Or when I say Muslims and ask you to speak for all Muslims in the same question, am I going down that road of lumping all Muslims to think and feel as they approach religion the same way?
Okay, that's important to understand. What I'm speaking is not my opinion. It's based on the text of the Quran. And the text of the Quran clarifies clearly that you cannot be a practicing Muslim unless you believe in Jesus. And so I'm a believer in Jesus, not because I'm living in the United States, an Egyptian, an Arabian, one from China or Europe, regardless of their geographical residency. They all, if they're practicing Muslims, must believe in Jesus, Abraham, Moses, all of the Old Testament prophets of God. And so in the text itself, there's a unity. Muslims unite with people of faith. Muslims have historically united with people of faith. But I think we should understand that the conflict we're experiencing in the world today is not based on religion as much as it's based on what a person's self-interest is, land and control over resources. You haven't even heard names so much like Muhammad until we had global policy that happened to center around land where there was oil. You remove the oil, you wouldn't even know these people. And so it's important that we understand that this is not driven by religion, no more than we can say that the Ku Klux Klan and slavery was based on Christianity. We can't say that because when we study the message of Jesus, we see a sense of unity, we sense a sense of forgiveness and, how would you say, people working together. Likewise, in the faith of Islam, you will have the same perception. So we're dealing with people's self-interest, their greed, and their sense of dominance. Has nothing to do with the religion per se. However, what happens is that when a person responds out of hurt and pain and a sense of oppression, they will speak through the theological lens of that people in that society. No different than when we were in the Vietnam War, and I served in the military during the Vietnam era. People downgraded the Southeast Asian people. They spoke as though Christianity had a higher ground of morality. They used their religion to kill. They thought that it was, they were defending something superior over the South Asian people. People speak through the lens of their faith. They speak through the lens of their culture. And so when we separate the two, then we can understand, is this driven by self-interest or is it driven by one's faith? And I would argue that it's more driven by self-interest.
Okay, we'll come back to that. I'm gonna go a little deeper into that. Now, I'm saying this, are the most popular African American or black Muslim in Southwest Florida. You could be the most popular Muslim in Southwest Florida. And with that, people move around and they interact with you. I mean, you speak at various churches, you speak in different religious settings. What has been the response to you when you say go into a Christian church to deliver your message?
I'm right at home. I'm right at home. I think we see the commonality. I embrace the various monotheistic faiths and the various religions. And I think anyone that will share with you when we delivered a message or spoke or provided a sermon, whether it was in the house of Christ or it was in a synagogue where the Jews represent a significant number of worshipers, they will see that there's a message of unity. And that's the lens by which I speak, is unity. And I think when we look at our challenges and problems in the county, that if people of faith came together, regardless of the name or the brand, we will see a greater unity and we can have a great impact in making the future beautiful for its citizens.
In your travel to various countries, assuming that, you can correct me on this, assuming that you were a Muslim at the time of your travel, what did you observe?
Well, when we talk
as it relates to Islam.
Yes, when we talk in terms of travel, I've been to Saudi Arabia. I made the pilgrimage to Mecca. I've been to North and West Africa. I studied and traveled there, did work there, and I was able to see Islam in practice. And at the same time, as being an American who studied Islam, I was able to see also not only the beauty of Islam, but I was able to see where in some of these cultures there were some flaw in terms of its practice. You see, most people, regardless of their faith tradition, they're not studious in their faith tradition. They have a religious experience, but they don't take time to study the book. And so often you see a separation from the conduct and the behavior and the text of the faith. And often this is a human flaw, that as human beings, we all are flawed. And so often we as human beings don't measure up to the philosophy or the teachings of our faith tradition. And that's where redemption comes in, that's where forgiveness comes in, and that's consistent in the Islamic, Judaic, Christian faith.
Okay, we're gonna go to a break. When we come back, I want you to address this. This is just a teaser. Now, we see you as a easygoing, conciliatory, faith-building, consensus-building Muslim. There are many who see other Muslims who may, do terrorist activities, and they're not like you. But still, a blanket goes over all Muslims are like that. We'll address that when we come back, and I also want to address some of the more other popular Muslims like Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that we see totally different, and the separation of you from the Nation of Islam. There's two different things. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Southwest Florida. We're here with my good friend Abdul Muhammed of the Quality Life Center, and also an Imam with the Center for Islam and Cultural Awareness. He's available to speak at your churches, at your synagogues, any types of religious institutions that you have. He can bring a great perspective to that. Before I left, I said specifically in general, here in America, oftentimes people, when they see somebody who's black or African American, they say that Muslim is a part of the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, that whole group. But there are different sects, types of Muslims that exist just like there are Christians, right?
Sure, there are associations, there are affiliations, no different in Christianity and Judaism or Buddhism and Hinduism. You have different focuses, sometimes using the same religion, but with a particular focus. That focus could be social justice. That focus could be a sense of healing and overcoming traumatic experiences. Every Islamic leader, every Christian leader or Jewish leader or religious leader tends to incline towards their faith based on what affinities they often have. They use the foundation of the faith, but they speak again through the voice and the pages of their faith tradition.
Mm-hmm. So when we see, so say like the World Trade Center, we saw Allah Akbar, something, whatever that cry was. I don't think it was Allah Akbar, but whatever that cry was before they crashed the planes and all that. What was that? The words they used?
Yeah,
like when it's
it was reported to acknowledge the greatness of God. It was a report of acknowledge the greatness of God.
But what is that in that language?
That's acknowledging that the Creator is greater than anything, than humanity, than any influence, any leader. It's God is greater. So
that was reported, and you saying it reported, meaning that it's not necessarily a fact. But when we associate that with the Muslim with terrorism, how you see that on TV, you know that all Muslims are not like that. How does one go about? I see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I see Muhammad Ali, and people like yourself who are constantly trying to educate people about that. How does that set back your ability to continue to educate people?
It's a challenge, Lee, particularly in these days that we're living in. It is a real challenge, and that's why I'm compelled to speak with you, and I make myself available to speak at various faith traditions so that we can get a better understanding. But I would invite the citizens of this country to remember, as I said a little earlier, that Ku Klux Klan did not speak for Christianity. We need to keep that in mind. It's not as though that was thousands of years ago. Matter of fact, there's active efforts today. So we have groups of people who acknowledge the faith of Christianity, but yet they see themselves as superior, and they do not see the common humanity of people of other ethnicities. And so they speak through the pages of Scripture, but their mentality is inconsistent. Their behavior is inconsistent with what they profess to believe.
How do you identify yourself? Do you identify yourself as African American, black, or something else?
Well, I normally accept the concept of an African American, but I'm an American. I'm a Muslim American. I'm a patriot of this country, and so there's no difference in that way, but I'm a practicing Muslim.
When you hear people say that, okay, here black people adding African on the front of their name, separating hyphens and all of that, any thoughts on that?
Sure. The idea of being, embracing the idea of being an African Muslim or an African American centers largely the result of slavery in this country, where as a people our identity was stripped from us. Our name was taken from us. Our culture was disintegrated. And so you were left with a people without a knowledge of who they are. And as a result, in this country, we've had to struggle to find our identity. And that identity, we embrace Africa, to acknowledge it, because in this country we were taught to think against Africa, to put Africa down. And so as a people of African descent, we've embraced the idea of African. And at the same time, we've embraced the historical contributions made by Africans and African Americans who have done great things, from inventions to establishing the pyramid, to creating medicine and science and engineering historically, where Europe years ago, when you study your history, used to come to Timbuktu, Mali, and Shanghai to become educated, to understand what all of this great wisdom of the ages was. And so being in this country, people of color did not see a connection with their historical greatness. And as a result, people of color identify themselves with African culture, and they have embraced the beauty of Africa.
And that doesn't necessarily mean you're unpatriotic or don't necessarily love your country because you're identifying yourself with Africa?
Not at all. I think you will find that the Irishman will be a proud Irish American. The Italian will be a proud Italian American. People embrace their heritage and their history. And as a result, what's wrong with people of color embracing their culture and their history?
The Nation of Islam, headed up by Louis Farrakhan, more popular for Malcolm X and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, was viewed as the black Muslim, more of a radical organization, still exists today. Does the Nation of Islam, which is totally a different type of religion that you practice as it relates to Islam, do they have any redeemable qualities or value to society today?
Absolutely, absolutely. The Nation of Islam has made great contributions to this society. The Nation of Islam philosophy has touched men and women who have been in the streets, who have contributed in the most negative way, and they turned their lives around. They have reformed their lives. In my life, in my earlier life, I was a part of that process of achieving that, where there are men who are now fathers, taking care of responsible duties in their household, taking care of their families and their children. This is powerful. The contribution made by Muslims, whether it is under the Nation of Islam or Muslims in general, has made a powerful impact on the lives of people in this country. And I would argue us to diminish that level of contribution made by people who call themselves either black Muslim, but I must correct you, it wasn't African Americans that called themselves black Muslim. That name originally came from the media, from the press. Muslims during the time of Elijah Muhammad never called himself a black Muslim. The press used that name.
And then it sort of got branded and it
Exactly,
continued.
exactly.
Right.
So I think
that was a separation thing within itself, or to demonize or to cast some kind of aspersion on this particular group.
I think so, and what you should understand is that Dr. Martin Luther King was considered a radical. Remember, let's look deeply at the letter that he wrote from the Birmingham jail. He recognized that many pastors and African American businessmen and leaders turned their backs on him as he moved throughout the South because they felt that he was rattling. He was a rebel rouser, and they didn't embrace him. They called him a radical. Today, everyone is embracing him. They called Gandhi a radical, but today everyone embracing him. They called Nelson Mandela a radical, but everyone is embracing him. So we must recognize that society and the world is changing, and society has changed to the vision of these great men and women who were once seen as radicals, but now they're heroes today.
Well, I'm glad you say that. President Barack Obama, his name, the fact that he was, in many cases, had to make it clear that he is not a Muslim. As though if he were a Muslim, that would be the end of the world as we know it here in America. Here in the 21st century, we have many Muslims who are American, but why is it that Barack Obama cannot be a Muslim if he were a Muslim? He's not a Muslim, he said he wasn't a Muslim, and still get treated the same way as any other presidential candidate?
That was obviously a buy-in to the most unenlightened part of a particular party, to demonize him. It showed that a sense of racism and bigotry is alive and well in this country.
Hold on, Abdul. Before you go there, when you say demonize him, is that saying that if you are Muslim, you're automatically demonized in America?
In the eyes of many people, absolutely right. But we need to look at every hospital you go in, you will find Muslim doctors. Every science lab, you will find Muslim doctors. Every school that you walk in, you will find Muslim teachers. You will find Muslims who are interwoven into the fabric of America every day, making a great contribution. And when you talk in terms of so-called terrorists, remember, there's no such thing as Islamic terrorists. Islam means peace. Terrorism creates fear. And so the both doesn't go together. So what you're looking at and what's happening in our today's society are men and women who are Americans, regardless of their faith tradition, they're contributing to make this country great. And at the same time, when you do a meticulous study, you will find that less than 1% of people who are actually doing so-called terrorist acts falls in the line of less than 1%. I dare say that if we become astute enough, do the research about Christians, about Jews, about the Protestant and the Catholics, and the bombs and the hatred that has existed, this is a human flaw that exists all over the world. Muslims do not have a monopoly on terrorism. African Americans were terrorized in this country for many years, and we've never called that level of terrorism, burning crosses, tearing down homes, keeping people out of opportunities and jobs, we've never called that racism.
But you could also, if you make those kind of statements, which you just have, you still could, some would say you're anti-American. Your thoughts?
Look at what I do every day. I'm a patriot. Not only did I serve this country honorably as a non-commissioned officer and an honorable discharge, but every day I wake up touching lives and serving people, producing jobs and working to shape lives so that they will be great citizens of this country. Our actions are proof.
What is an imam?
An imam is a religious leader similar to a rabbi or a priest or a minister. It's one who leads the congregation, provides all of the ceremonial duties from weddings to funerals to newborn babies coming about, counseling, teaching, educating about the faith of Islam.
When I traveled in Europe, particularly, a couple of my travels were South Africa, France, and Great Britain. I saw on a regular basis, which I was shocked because I wasn't prepared for that being from here in America. All of these Muslims going to these parks and praying throughout the day. Large crowds, people would be astonished to see these types of crowds. And as I was watching this, as I was moving around through the city, where are these people going at a certain time of the day? And they were all going to these parks and they were praying. And I went to the park and I saw all these people praying in peace. And I was like, I don't see anything like that in America. Now, maybe in New York and places like that.
In the urban areas, the largest cities.
But what I took away from that was the devoted commitment to the religion of Islam that was just fascinating.
Yes, yes.
Does your religion, in terms of the disciplines and things that are associated there too, require that you are even more a disciplined, committed than, say, other faiths?
I won't make that claim, but I will say that Islam does have a reputation of its practitioners of being disciplined, hardworking, ethical, and serious about family and making a contribution to this country, particularly as it relates to working with the poor, people who are in need. You'll see this throughout this country, and that's a part of the faith. In other words, in the Quran, it makes reference in one place where it said the desert Arabs have faith on their tongues, but it has not reached their heart. And no doubt in all faiths, there are people who talk, but that faith has not reached their hearts. I'm challenging myself and other Muslims and Christians and Jews and Buddhists and people of all faiths that we will bring our faith from our heart and bring a unity to have a positive impact in our community in Southwest Florida.
Right here at the local level. Of course, you know, you and I have been around each other for a long time. And I know for a fact that you have worked diligently to be a brother, a confidant, a friend of many of the African-American preachers in this community. Not gonna call any names, but my point is I still think that they don't embrace you the way you embrace them. And I also have heard, and you've heard this before too, that at the Quality Life Center itself, Abdul Muhammed is over there raising these children to be Muslims? Address that in its totality.
Well, it's unfortunate. Ignorance sometimes is very rampant in our communities, and that's the flaw that continues this challenge of us rising up to be more productive citizens. I think anyone that comes to Quality Life Center, what you will see, number one, are people of different faiths, of different ethnicities, of different cultures, working in a harmonious way to have an effect that will help to uplift and transform the lives of our children and our families. We're working in harmony in that way. I think sometimes being new to a community, though I'm not so new now. It's been,
you're
I'm
veteran now.
I'm in my 27th year. And so if I think if we were doing something that was not consistent with the Judeo-Christian Islamic principles, it would be known now. I believe our commitment is working not only with families and children, but working harmoniously with people of all faith traditions.
And would you say that the Quality Life Center doesn't promote any particular religion?
That's correct. Our organization, which I'm the founder, along with a small number of people, and you know this to be the case, has never taught Islam or any religion. But what we do encourage people is to bring their values, their principles, their discipline, and their intellect to the table in order to better the lives of our children and families.
You brought some books with you. I know you didn't expect me to ask you about them, but tell us what you're reading there.
Well,
People see them on TV.
I'm glad that you asked. This is a book, if I can hold it up.
That's fine. Hold it to that camera.
I think it's an excellent read for anyone who is interested in knowing the basics about Islam.
Okay.
It's an excellent book written by a scholar named
What
John.
everyone needs to know about Islam.
That's right. That's right. It can be found at Barnes & Noble, or you can go on Amazon to get this book. It's an excellent book that I think
Written
will
in English,
answer,
not in Quran.
Written- that's
I mean
correct.
in Arabic.
That's correct. In English, and a scholar, well written,
Okay.
in a way that everyone can understand. This is an excellent book.
Okay. Final question. The Center for Islam and Cultural Awareness. People can reach out to you if they would like to come.
Yes.
They don't necessarily have to be a Muslim.
That's correct.
Uh,
Our doors are open to people of all faiths.
Is there an email address you'd like to give, or a website or something for that?
Yeah, I can give you a number.
Go ahead,
we
call
can
it out.
start with that, 239-699-8816.
One more time.
239-699-8816.
And that's located in Fort Myers, Florida.
Located right in the area that is now being called Midtown Fort Myers.
Is it still
area.
yellow, color, painted yellow? If I remember the house.
Not yellow, but
What color was
but it has a Florida brightness.
It's clean, man. It's
yeah.
always clean when I come by there. It stands
Florida
out in the
brightness.
community.
Yes, but I thank you very much, not only for this opportunity, but you've always been a person that's been open-minded and curious about all faiths, and I appreciate the way you conduct your show. And you're one of our heroes, Lee, so we thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thanks for coming out, and we got to do this again, okay?
Thank you very much.
With full disclosure, Abdul, Muhammed, and I, we go way back, okay? Good friends. And I was a member, of course, of the Quality Life Center early on on this board of director, and I'm always considered a Q. We'll see you next week on Leap This Live.
Pitts Live is a Lee Pitts Enterprise production.